Okay, I want to kind of take up from where Winford left off really and just talk about a piece of work we're doing for our esteemed client to go around and review all the food festivals in Wales. I have to say, when we took on this job last year, there was 48 that we quoted for, and then suddenly it's 57. But never mind.
That's a bonus view. More journeys across Wales.
We love our work, we love our work. Okay, the kind of approach we've taken is based around distinctiveness. Andy talked about distinctiveness, Philip talked about distinctiveness this morning, and it's something we feel is very, very important to food culture, and we've used that as a basis for the way we're doing this piece of work. I'm going to start off just covering some old ground, not Abergavenny. Festivals, really, why bother with them? And you know, we had to think about this when we were thinking about the work that we're doing in terms of, you know, the role of food festivals. And obviously they come from lots of different angles. The main one, I think, is the one that Andy talked about, which is really developing that kind of holistic food culture, which means that we won't need festivals anymore in a certain number of years' time. But the various elements of food festivals then are, of course, about producers. And a lot of food festivals were created, and I would say that the funding in Wales has been about trying to help producers, trying to stimulate production based on agricultural diversification initially, so that farmers could create products, they could sell them, and they could create markets where they could sell them. The other side then is about the kind of consumer end of that, about stimulating demand. So it's no good producing this stuff if nobody wants to eat it, and so you can have festivals where people can go along, they can see it, touch it, taste it, and hopefully buy it. A big impact, I think, that was perhaps incidental in a way is the food tourism angle. And festivals work in different ways to promote different levels of tourism, whether it's local, regional, or national. Host towns, I think, you know, inescapably experience some real economic benefits from food festivals. I think it takes them a long time to appreciate that. And I know a town like Abergavenny, perhaps, you know, some of the local traders for the first few years would say, oh, bloody food festival takes all our customers away, despite the fact there's 30,000 people on the street outside. I think people do realise it. It takes a few years sometimes, but there are definite economic benefits. I think the other big winner is a perception of Wales as a nation. And I think when I first came to Wales 20 years ago, oh my God, I don't think Wales was seen as a place for good food, if I'm honest. And I think that's a total transformation. And I have to say, in my personal opinion, the investment that's gone into food festivals and to food production has certainly helped there. Just, Sarah mentioned some of these figures earlier, but this is, we've been, as part of our kind of tie-up with Abergavenny, we've been running visitor surveys for the last 4 or 5 years. And we try and assess kind of the value to the town, the value of the festival. The festival's been running here now for 12 years. It's built substantially, it's built gradually, and it goes from strength to strength. We said 30,000 visitors, Kim, it's probably a few more now. I think one of the difficulties with any food festival is actually measuring how many people come to it. There's one festival on our calendar that has absolutely amazing footfall figures, but then it is based in the car park of a big retail centre, and a bit like Philip was saying earlier, if the people are there anyway, that's great, but whether we can count them as being footfall attributable to our festivals is a different matter. So there's about 30,000 visitors, 200 producers, and all of those producers are doing pretty well, as you'll see tomorrow if you're here for the festival. Now we estimate that in total, and this, we've said up to £3.8 million came out of the festival 2 years ago, and that's not just spend at the festival, that's spend as a result of the festival. So that's people coming here for a special trip, they may be staying in a local hotel, eating in local restaurants, doing some additional shopping with those traders on the high street as well while they're here. So the whole of the festival is generating something like that amount of money. And that's not all staying in Abergavenny. And I think one of the things about Abergavenny is its geographic position is quite important, that it can be a kind of clearinghouse for producers from West Wales. And if you go down to Cheese Quarter tomorrow and see the number of people coming up from Ceredigion and Pembrokeshire, bringing their artisan cheeses, and they sell out very, very quickly. And that money is going back to the kind of some of the less well-off parts of Wales as well. So as well as stimulating local production, it's also benefiting other parts of Wales. As you can see from the map, this is roughly where our visitors came from in our last year's visitor survey. Still, the biggest concentration is from South East Wales, as you'd expect. We get quite a big concentration down the M4 corridor to the east and from the rest of the whole of the UK and abroad. I think also in terms of cultural terms, the food festival has been one of the building blocks in the kind of the building of Monmouthshire as this kind of what Kevin Morgan from Cardiff University now calls Gastro Valley. But I mean, essentially Monmouthshire is definitely a food county now, and that's built around its restaurant offer, its producers, and the food festival is a really pivotal part of that without doubt. So our job, and I'll just correct this to 57 now, to do 54 Assembly-supported food festivals in Wales. I mean, for a lot of people, this is, people continually say to me, God, what a dream job. You've got to go around and visit 54 food festivals in a year. Now, I have to say, I'm not visiting 54 festivals. Jack at the back is visiting 54 food festivals. And he's taking along touchscreens, which we'll talk about in a minute. The rest of us, we're taking it in turns. We've got a team of 7, 8 of us all together, I think, who go along as well. I'm doing about 7 or 8. Some of my colleagues are doing more. But we're all really enjoying it and really enjoying the experience. The areas that we're looking at in our work then break down to kind of 4 main elements, really. The festivals themselves, the producers, the visitors, and the other kind of stakeholders, whether it's local traders or important bodies such as the Welsh Assembly. And so we've treated them in different ways. Also, when we got the job, we set some rules, which were quite important. We had to visit all festivals. That was a client requirement. We had to think about the value of the investment that was going into them. But we really wanted to kind of go beyond just a straight kind of economic assessment of food festivals, because festivals are about much more than money. They're about cultural factors, they're about changing cultures, they're about education, they're about getting people to live differently. Another thing we felt was very important was that we wanted to assess food festivals, but we didn't want to create a league table. And that's quite a challenge in a way, because if we're going to go out and measure festivals, we've got to come back with some kind of results. And what we don't want to do is say, well, this festival is better than this other festival, because we think festivals have different roles. And so we had to do a bit of thinking about that. The last and perhaps the most complex thing in a way was, because we're going to visit 50-something food festivals across Wales, it's a lot of travel, and we wanted to do it as sustainably as possible. So there's a few things we said we'd do. The first one was easy. We said we'd carbon log everything we do, so all our journeys are logged, and we can try and do a carbon assessment of the job as a whole. Secondly, we're trying to use public transport wherever possible, and we bought a Bullet, which is out in the lobby there. You'll have seen it. It's an 8-foot-long Danish freight bike, which people say it looks like an ice cream van. But the idea was that all our equipment can go in the front of this freight bike, and we were going to use trains wherever possible and the bike to get to festivals. Sadly, it's too big to go onto a train. And so in the spirit of our great leader, David Cameron, we've now bought a van, which is outside, and we carry the bike around in the van, and then we cycle from the nearest access point. But the message was there, and it's...
Effectively, you increase your contract. You're supposed to bike to all of it.
As a trade-off, I did promise that I would cycle to a client meeting in Aberystwyth at some point in the contract. I thought November might be a more challenging time, so we'll maybe do that. Okay. Right, think about producers. To find out about producers, rather than hassle them when they're at food festivals because they're quite busy, we've run an online survey of all the producers on the FMDD, the Welsh Assembly database, and we've had responses so far from about 145, I think, which is about a third of the producers on the database. Kind of basics that everybody should know about and people should understand. Producers like festivals. They like good festivals. They're a very good opportunity for them. They can make good money from them. There are certain things that need to be considered, though, and that is that festivals have a responsibility towards producers. I think it was really interesting what Philip was saying this morning about providing low-cost stalls with guaranteed footfall for producers, because you can't expect producers to turn up as some kind of circus attraction, to be there, that, everyone loves seeing a producer, but unless they're going to take money, they're not going to come back again. So it's really important that festivals need to provide them with the right level of footfall, and to do that, you've got to have some kind of minimum event size, and I know that the Assembly specify there should be at least 20 producers at a supported event, and there's got to be effective marketing, and marketing is very difficult and is very expensive, but of course from today you all know how to do it now through social media, so we're going to see an improvement there. The other thing then is about the venues itself. There's got to be some basic facilities in place. Everybody wants decent hand washing facilities, they want decent toilet facilities, they want to be able to park their vans, and they want power and water, those simple things. Venues have got to be accessible and attractive so that people want to attend them. And we've got to be really careful about festival fatigue. The great thing about festivals is they don't compete. There's an awful lot of festivals in Wales. they reinforce each other. We've got a festival culture now, which is great. I don't think festivals suffer as a result. But if you get two festivals within 10 miles of each other on the same day, that is obviously not a good idea. And so some collective planning would be a really good thing. Visitors, we're not going to give any results in terms of visitors, any outputs, because we're still doing surveys. And if you're around on Sunday, we'll be in the market hall in Abergavenny here with our touchscreens. Jack will, and I'll be there for part of the day, I promise. And we have a touchscreen survey that you can run through, tell us about the festival, what you like about it, what you really like about it, which aspects you like about it, anything you might not like about it. We look at things like the kind of the stalls, the facilities, added value in terms of theatre, music on the street, entertainment, the chef dems, things like that. Importantly, we want to know from people how long they're coming for, how much they're spending, where they've come from, and if they're likely to come back. All that information is going to go to a real big data set, which would be great. I mean, we hope to get about 3,000 or so across the 50 festivals, maybe a little more. So by the end of the year, we'll have a real good data set of consumers who are visiting food festivals in Wales, and that's going to be a really useful piece of information for us.